said that. But David Einhorn wrote a piece yesterday in the Huffington Post where he said too much of a good thing is a bad thing. He compared it to jelly donuts and said one's good, two might be okay. By the time you get to 6 or a dozen, things get a lot more complicated. And I'm wondering, are we at that point with the easy policy?
Well, I don't think he's saying it quite right. It's roughly right, but not quite right. What happens is that an economy with a certain amount of basic virtue, like a bunch of Germans or Japanese or something, can resort to a lot of extreme Keynesian intervention and help things. But if your whole cultural system disintegrates, say the way it did in Greece, where everybody wants an easy living with no work and a lot of make-believe and fraud and what have you, then the Keynesian stuff won't work. Keynesian stuff. So what happens is that all this intervention works best if you have a lot of basic merit, basic credit in the bank, so to speak, which you've earned by deserving it. And, of course, we've used up some of our store of basic credit. That's what's happened.
So where does that leave us?
So we're more dangerous than we used to be.
Is there a way to measure, if we're on a scale of 1 to 10 and 10's a real tipping point, where are we along that scale?
Well, that's a very intelligent question. And if the people who teach economics asked it and answered it more often, we'd have a better educated citizenry. It's so hard. It doesn't fit the techniques of economics to discuss the sin ratio. They're very uncomfortable talking about sin in economics.
And what does your gut tell you, though?
Well, we have a lot of sin and more than we formerly had. The reason the Keynesian stuff worked so well when we finally came to it in preparation for World War II was because we had so much virtue to draw on. Mm-hmm. So the Keynesian stuff really worked perfectly. As your virtue deteriorates, as people seek easy money from the government by using their voting privileges instead of through working, then the Keynesian stuff will work less well the next time. And next time it will work less well. That's what's happening.
I take it you're not in Paul Krugman's camp, though. He thinks that all we need is that the Fed didn't do enough, that the government didn't do enough.
Paul Krugman does not sufficiently understand the kind of sin that the Democrats like. You know, the crooked plaintiffs' lawyers. And that stuff disintegrates the body politic and affects how well it, these economic principles that he believes in works. That said, I think Paul Krugman is one of the smartest and most articulate people we have, and he's very often right.
You touched on this idea, though, of people using their voting privileges rather than working. I guess.
Well, that's Greece. Everybody recognizes if you go too far along that line, you'll get a very dysfunctional civilization.
Are we near a point like that in the United States?
Well, we're nearer than we used to be. We still have a lot of virtue left.
Okay. If you look at what the Fed has done, other people point to it and say, it's doing this because we have no fiscal policy right now. The monetary policy is taking the part of where fiscal policy should be stepping in. Would you agree with that thesis?
Well, the Fed has a limited repertoire, and actually they have to choose from the repertoire they have. And the Fed can't vote a lot of money to create armaments or dams or highways or what have you. So what they do is they affect what they can affect. I've got no real quarrel with the Federal Reserve System. I think that on the way up, Greenspan was blind not to step on the boom.
But you don't.
He really overdosed on Ayn Rand. And practically everybody else did too.
But there's not a screaming signal that's going out right now that is nearly as clear?
Well, I don't think it's as easy to fix as it would have been if we'd never gone so crazy. So it may well be that we have a long slog ahead of us.
As an investor, though, Einhorn used this whole thesis that he had, the idea that too much of a good thing is a bad thing, to say that in a normal situation like this, he would be buying stocks, selling bonds, and selling gold. But because he doesn't trust the Fed, he says he's buying gold right